Chapter 2. The Glasgow Royal. "Oh, you're awake, Inspector Buchanan," said the nurse. "Where am I?" "You're in the Royal. You fell and hit your head." "How long have I been here?" 2 days. "Shite, 2 days. My wife—" "Not to worry. I believe your office contacted her and told her it wasn't serious. You've just bumped your head. I'll get Dr. Aswan." She was back in 4 minutes with a diminutive Dr. Aswan. As the doctor approached, Buchanan did his best to prop himself up on one elbow. "How are we today, Inspector Buchanan?" "My head feels like there's a bunch of Clydeside riveters on piecework banging around in there. What happened to me?" "That's what we hoped you'd tell us. You were found lying in a pool of blood on the floor of the men's toilet in Porter's Bar. Apparently you slipped and hit your head on the floor." "So it wasn't a dream then," said Buchanan, gingerly touching his bandaged scalp. "We did a scan while you were unconscious. Don't worry, you have a thick skull. Nothing wrong that a period of rest won't cure. We did have to staple your scalp back together, though, and that will be tender for several weeks. The staples can come out next week, providing you behave yourself." "What about the pain in my head?" "Oh, we'll give you something for that," said the nurse, as the doctor moved on to his next patient. "A wee dram would go down nicely. This is the Royal Infirmary, Inspector, not your local." "Pity," replied Buchanan, closing his eyes and drifting off to sleep. "Inspector Buchanan," said the nurse, waking him from his slumbers, "there's someone here to see you." "Good afternoon, Buchanan." Buchanan opened his eyes and focused on the uniform that was Assistant Chief Constable Anderson. "Good afternoon, sir. Sorry I can't stand to attention. Lying down is the best I can achieve." "What on earth happened, man? My best DCI found lying on a toilet floor in a pool of blood, and drunk to boot, plus 2 dead men in the street under a police car. Every 5 minutes the chief constable's on the phone wanting to know just what the hell's going on. The newspapers are having a field day, and I've got to give a news conference in front of the cameras this afternoon." Anderson walked over to the window and looked down at Warnock Street and smiled. A harried TV crew were arguing with a traffic warden. "Do you realize," he said while continuing to watch the street spectacle, "I've got just 18 months to go to retirement, and me with an unblemished record." "It wasn't my fault." Anderson turned away from the window and looked at Buchanan. "No? So whose blood and teeth was spattered on the toilet floor of Porter's Bar?" "They were looking at pictures on their mobile phone." "That's not a crime. My grandchildren are on theirs texting all hours. I'm sorry, Buchanan, but I've got no choice. The press are baying for blood, and you have become a problem I don't need." "Wait a minute. Don't say something you might regret. Do you know who those 2 shites were?" "Who? The men under the police car?" "No. Forensics are still working on it." "One was Davy Shelton. Can't remember the name of the other one." "Shelton? That rings a bell. Wasn't he the nonce that got off? If I remember rightly, he had a good solicitor." "Randall, that's who the other bastard was. He was Shelton's lawyer," said Buchanan, sitting up in bed, momentarily forgetting the pain in his head. "Well," said Anderson, rubbing his hands together, "this puts a different light on the matter. All the same, we can't have you wandering around being ambushed by the press." He looked at his watch. "Right. I've got to go back to headquarters. But first, I must get forensics to confirm their identities, and then, I think a discreet leak to the press before the press conference, and finally, to find somewhere to hide you till this all blows over. Oh, by the way, how's Mrs. Buchanan?" "Oh, she's fine." "Does she know about your injury?" "Apparently personnel called her and told her there was no need to rush home." "Where is she?" "In France, visiting her mother. As soon as my head clears, I'll give her a call." "Great. I'll be off. And Buchanan?" "Good work." Anderson walked off, muttering to himself, 2 nonces off the street. That's one for the good guys. Suitably anesthetized, Buchanan sat up in his hospital bed and watched the televised news conference. Anderson had stage managed the situation brilliantly, just in time for the TV network 1 o'clock news. The identities and histories of the 2 men had been previously leaked to the press, so instead of the police actions, Buchanan's in particular, being the focus of the press's attention, it was instead the activities of Shelton and his lawyers that took the brunt of their questions. Buchanan watched while Anderson, with a grave look on his face, announced that the deceased's mobile phones had been located. He was able to confirm that there were indecent photographs of children contained in both phones' memories. Pressed for confirmation of the injured policeman's name, Anderson said it was being withheld pending full recovery from his injuries, and police inquiries were complete. 3 hours later, Anderson was seated at Buchanan's bedside. "You watched the news conference?" "Yes, thought it went off quite well." "I thought so too. The press are after you, though. You won't have any peace when you get out of here." "How did they find out about my name?" "Guesswork in a pub full of Rangers supporters." "Ah, I forgot about that. Who won, by the way?" "Haven't a clue. Golf's my game. Ever play it?" "Me? Chase a wee ball round the green? Never." "That's a pity. It's a great way to network and meet the right kind of people." "I'm not rolling up my trouser leg for anyone." Anderson shook his head. "You don't understand, Buchanan. How are you ever going to get promoted if you don't mix with the right kind of people?" "Listen, I'm a policeman first. The only people I mix with are the honest criminals. It's those people who think they're above the law that I concentrate my efforts on." "I'm sorry you take it that way, Buchanan, but if you ever change your mind, all you have to do is ask." "That'll be a snowy day in hell," thought Buchanan. "Right, down to business. We've had a talk at headquarters. You said your wife's mother lives in France?" "Yes, just outside Dieppe." "And your sister-in-law lives in Eastbourne?" "Yes. Why do I feel like I'm being shunted into a siding? You're not sending me on gardening leave, are you?" "No, of course not. We've got something better in mind," chuckled Anderson. "We've arranged for you to be seconded to East Sussex." "East Sussex? But—" "No buts, Buchanan." "Well, what about the inquest? There's bound to be one." "Oh, don't worry. I've had a word with Mackenzie at the Procurator Fiscal's office. He says since you weren't actually involved with the two men being run over, they may not even have to call you to give evidence, though you'll probably have to give a written statement." "Well, if that's the way he looks at it—" "But East Sussex? Come on, man, it's not a foreign country. And besides, I hear the local beer's fine." "So what's this case that requires the services of an old Glasgow cop? Some old dear had her knitting needles swiped." On the morning of the 30th of March, a woman's body was fished out of the Sovereign Harbour in Eastbourne. Then a week later, a detective sergeant was found in his car. Asleep, or was he drunk? Neither. He was in his car when it was pulled from the same harbour. Was he on duty? On leave? Not sure, you'll have to ask. Are they related? The deaths, that is? That's what their internal affairs wants you, if you accept this secondment, to find out. What choice do I have? Disciplinary hearing, your record being leaked to the press, career finished? I'll go home and pack my bags. I thought you'd see sense. But don't they have someone in-house who could take care of it? Half the department is down with the trots, apparently. They were going to get someone from the Met, but he came down with the measles. Not a very healthy bunch, are they? Their ACC and I go back many years. Last week she told me she was looking for an outsider to take over the investigation. Felt an outsider would get better results. And that's how I come to get volunteered. There's that, and the fact that Shelton had friends in high places. I thought it would be good for your health to get some sea air. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Let me stay here. I'll sort this out. No, we have a team already working on the case, almost ready to make arrests. In fact, your presence could jeopardize the whole investigation. That's why we need you out of the limelight. Two birds with one stone, huh? Knowing how you work, Buchanan, I really think you're the man for the job, except for one thing. And what's that? It's your use of English, or should I say Glaswegian. If you want to get ahead down south, you'll have to moderate how you speak. They don't provide interpreters for staff. Buchanan smiled, nodded his head, and thought, the same old bullshit.